Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from. Excited to continue our interview series. I'm Don Fisher, your host. This is Mom's Movement and Mindset: How to Break Through Resistance and Transform Your Body and Mind. Awesome guest today. My first time having the opportunity to speak with her. That's Tanya Newbould. She is a passionate coach, and she helps others to learn that you don't know what you don't know, and helps you to break your story and to step into your God-given power. Hey, Tanya, how are you today?
I'm great, Don. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. I want to jump right in and allow you to shine and speak to your genius. So, with that, a little bit from your experience here, if you could just kind of like define what resistance is to you, and also give a couple of examples that you've seen from either clients or potential clients when they've kind of come up across or come up against resistance and some blockage in their life.
Well, resistance usually comes when there's fear. People, as much as they may want to change and grow, they get very frightened to change for many different reasons. It could be physically uncomfortable. It could be emotionally or mentally uncomfortable. If I change, will I lose my friends or the comfort zone that I have, my family, everyone who knows me the way I am? So there's a lot of things that happen, and a lot of times we're not even in tune with why we feel that way. So that's where it speaks to what you were saying: what you don't know, you don't know. How are you supposed to know it unless you know it? And so what I like to do working with people is really dive into what I call their story, because we all have one, and a lot of people define themselves by that story. But the problem is that might be an old story that has old feelings and is stopping you from moving forward powerfully where you are today. So that's where the resistance will really show up.
I love that. And it's been my experience. I feel like it's easier said than done, but obviously working with someone like yourself, having someone to point it out is just so powerful because, like you said, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Okay, so someone's facing resistance, right? They don't even know what it is. Maybe they're starting to just start to feel aware of it or become aware of it. Excuse me. Um, if they want nothing more than to change, why would they experience resistance?
Again, that goes back to a lot of times you just don't know how to change. You don't know where to begin, or it's so overwhelming that it's easier to do what you're used to doing. So I think the key is, and what I like to do as a coach is I always give homework based on our session and what I feel needs to be worked on in that time. And I try to keep it very simple and enticing. So it's not like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. As we uncover, a lot of times I find, and you probably find this too, it's language. I can't change. I can't do this. I don't want to. And so even if you're not there physically, emotionally, and mentally, a lot of times just changing your verbiage to say, I will change. I will lift more weights. I will eat healthier, even if it takes a while for everything else to catch up. That's where you can start to break that resistance and also really take note of, where am I negatively spinning and talking, and how do I begin to shift that? Because it's all about the neurotransmitters in our brain. The more we can shift and speak positively, then our mind follows. Our spirit already knows. The spirit's always on point, but a lot of times we're not in touch with that. And the monkey mind takes over, and the monkey mind is a fight or flight mind. It's like the 2 million-year-old mind. Instead of fighting the saber-toothed tigers, as Tony Robbins says, it could be bills, it could be your job, it could be the pandemic. And there's a lot of collective PTSD going on in the world based on what we are all going through. So how do you navigate through that at this time to continue to move forward powerfully? And a lot of times it's just changing your language.
Yeah, it sounds a lot from what you're saying, kind of like almost like personality flexing. Like it's action. It's not
Mhm.
something that just kind of happens. And sometimes I feel like maybe there's confusion there because it's so subtle that maybe our ego wants to dismiss it. But from what you're
Yeah.
telling me, it seems like, no, you got to be aware of that, and you got to actually change your verbiage, change your language.
Yeah, and change is uncomfortable for most people. And massive action equals change. So I see people, and you probably see this too in fitness. I'm going to work out, I'm going to do this. And that's why New Year's resolutions very rarely work. You have this great thought that you're going to do all this stuff, but then if you don't take the action to back it up, within a week, you're right back to your old habits. So when you really do commit to a change, a lot of times people won't change until they're so bloody uncomfortable that they just can't stand it anymore. And once you decide, and I love this, the Latin word decide means to cut off all other possibilities. Then you say, no matter what, I have to get into action and not go back to my old way of being.
Yeah, that's incredible. Something similar, a friend of mine once said too about like commitment is when you commit, there is no like more or less committing. Like committed is committed. You know, like you said, cut off all possibilities. That's it.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we're kind of moving in this journey here, right? Someone's becoming aware of the resistance, kind of why, even in the face of change or wanting to change, they're still resistant, still experiencing fear. What are some tips that you could provide somebody, and maybe tips that you provide your clients right now to help them overcome that resistance and work through it?
One of the things, and this is very important, and I have a wonderful financial friend, Rita Bacuzzi, and she talks about this, is document the wins. We're very good at having our list. We'll do 9 out of 10 things, and all we see is the one thing we did not do. So instead of that, document those wins. And I don't care if it's, I didn't eat that cookie today, I didn't say a negative thing about myself today, whatever it is, start writing that down. Actually, I'm a big believer in physically writing, because I think it really, the brain, there's a connection between the brain, again, the neurotransmitters, and writing, that when we get things out on paper or we speak it out, we can make it disappear. And so the more we can see what we're doing, and then you can document over a week, oh, I did one thing here today, I did 2 things here today. And you start to realize you do have the opportunity to break that resistance. And then it gets more and more comfortable, then it gets easier, then eventually it becomes a habit, and you really shift.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you ever read that, just out of curiosity, or that book or heard of the book, Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Yes, and I hear it's an amazing book. I have not read it personally, but I think there's so many good self-help books or podcasts, YouTube videos. The more we can surround ourselves with that type of positivity versus watching the news. I know people who all they do is watch CNN holed up in their house because based on what the media is telling them, they should be scared, they should be panicked, they shouldn't be around people. And I think everyone has to do what's right for them on their own journey. But at the same token, I sometimes don't look at the news for days because it's very easy to get wrapped up in that. And let's face it, the news, I'm not going to say it's not real, but a lot of it is sensationalized to draw us in, to keep us on it. So we have to create our own programs within our lives. And whether it be go out in nature, stand and ground yourselves, prayer, meditation, journaling, and start doing different habits to create a positive mindset.
It's almost like becoming quite literally the author of your own experience, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. So with people that you have, worked with, or let's say if you're on a call with them, for example, and you're helping them, showing them like how you can help them, and you sense that they're kind of facing some blocks and going through some resistance, whether it's a fear of, commitment, I don't have enough time, the money objection, whatever the case may be. How do you work them through that, right, and get them outside of their comfort zone to help them move forward?
A lot of times, let's say we'll start with the money example, is it's amazing. People say, I don't have the money. But then as you talk to them, you'll find out that they'll buy Starbucks every day. They'll go and do something that, or buy things that they don't even use. So what it goes back to is, how valuable are you to yourself? A lot of moms, especially, will give to their children, will give to their family, will give to their community, but they don't take the time to give to themselves. I'm actually currently doing a 30-day self-care women and moms mindset transformation challenge to teach women to take 5 minutes a day. That's it. I'm not even saying hours, you have to go do this, but 5 minutes a day to set your day, to take care of yourself so that you can then take care of the world. It goes back to the oxygen mask. When you're on the plane, what did they tell you? Put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then on your child. We all need to do that as human beings so that we can set ourselves up to win before we go and do that for everyone else. So that speaks to the money thing. The other things, it's really just like, where are you at? I like to find out a lot of times when people are resistant, there's always a story behind it. And what I love to find out is, what is your story? And then say, is that logical thinking or illogical thinking? I just had someone recently, and she's an amazing woman. And she said, every time I do something for myself, something bad happens. And I was like, oh, wow, that's very interesting. And we started breaking it down. And so my question is, when is the first time in your life that you remember this happening? Because sometimes it can only be one negative experience and we make a decision right there. Oh, if I do that, this happens. So it's breaking that stigma and the resistance against it to realize, oh no, I do deserve to take time. I do deserve to give myself care and love and grow. And that's what we're here for. So I like to just find out what's going on and then help you get through that.
Yeah, it sounds like that last part there. It sounds like it speaks to an individual's limiting beliefs, which you said so perfectly are conditions, right? They're not feelings,
Yes.
aren't facts. They're just things that over our lifetime they kind of get ingrained in us, and that's so cool that you can take them, right, show them where that story began,
Mm-hmm.
and help them rewrite it, right, and help them become the author again.
Absolutely, because a lot of time the story we write for ourselves, like I had realized when I was 30 that my story was my teenage story. And I got a lot of sympathy for it. My father was an alcoholic. My mother was manic depressive. I'm adopted, and people be like, oh, wow, that must have been so hard. And I would get all this sympathy for it, which I thought was great. And I'm connecting. But what I didn't realize is I was stopping myself from creating the next chapter, from moving forward. I was living in the past, not the present. And even living in the future is great. You want to define it, but you want to be present, grounded in today. What can I do today? And start to shift from there.
The one thing you just said there, and it just made me think of this, is I think sometimes people can get trapped in the past because with that story, it's not like the story doesn't serve them. I feel like they tell that story, and like you said, people are like,
Mhm.
oh, I feel so bad for you. You had it so rough. And they get something out of that, and
Yes.
that, I feel like that can even maybe keep them there.
Well, you're right about that. So there is what's called the payoff. But then so the payoff is, I tell you my story, you give me sympathy. It makes me feel good. You're connecting with me. But what is it costing me? It is costing me being present, creating a new story, letting go of the time I'm spending in the past to look at where do I want to move forward. So that's where you have to start to weigh out, is it costing you more than the payoff? And most of the time it is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Okay, last question for you. Um, So now like I said, we're going through this journey here. They're aware of the resistance. They're starting to take some action to overcome that resistance. How is it that an individual is able to, through overcoming certain blocks, moving through that discomfort, how does that help them to build resilience, right? And able to make things easier and easier to move past as time goes on?
So resilience comes when it's like a muscle. It's no different than working out. You do not go to the gym once and walk out with a great body. It happens over time, over repetition, and continued focus on it. No different than your mental state of being, your success meter, whatever it is you want to focus on, relationships. It may be very uncomfortable at first. It may not feel good. It may be like, ugh, but the more you do it, the more you repeat it, the more you flex that mental, spiritual, emotional, physical muscle, the more you build it. And now when I go through things, and I went through very horrific postpartum depression to the point that I had the forethought and co-created a documentary, When the Bow Breaks, a documentary about postpartum depression, which was executive produced and narrated by Brooke Shields. It's in 70 countries and 6 languages. When I went through that and I would talk about crying, it was very painful. And as time went by, I cleared it by sharing my story. Going through the pandemic triggered that same type of, this is permanent, because that's what I thought with my postpartum depression. Then I go, it's not. It feels like that. Your mind is telling you that. But because you've gone through trauma and come out the other side, you actually know it's not. No difference with resilience. You begin to realize, no, you can visit here. You cannot live here. There's a difference.
Yeah, I had a coach recently tell me it's about, we don't actually ever change, we just shift. Our story is always going to be there, but we can shift and choose to shift out of it into that present or the future vision for ourselves, or stay in the past. So I love that. Again, I feel like it's easier said than done, but when you start flexing those muscles, it's quite incredible, like the transformation that some people can go through.
It really is. And that's where I think having a coach or a mentor, whoever that may be for you, is really important, because it is my job to keep you on task. It is my job to check in with you, and no judgment if you didn't do what you had hoped, but let's find out what's stopping you. Why? How can I support you? How can I keep you on task? How can I create a permanent shift in you? When I see my clients come back and go, oh my God, Tanya, I now realize this. Thank you so much. That to me is the greatest blessing, because I have probably wasted God knows how many years and time not knowing stuff. So if I can save you time, I am all about it.
Yeah, I mean, just to that last point, you kind of made me think of this, that even getting a coach, maybe like working with a coach, I feel like the limiting beliefs that you've talked about a bunch today will play a factor in that. Like, I've had people say to me before, like, oh, like I need to get in shape first before I get a coach. And it's like, there's like, I think sometimes a misconception of like what your job is, what you're there to help them with.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just there to help grow and help
Yep.
people shift. And and also too, I do feel, and I am passionate about this, it is our God-given right to lead a life of joy, love, laughter. And if we go to what I've gone through doesn't allow that, look at Oprah Winfrey. What a beautiful story. This woman was raped, teen pregnancy, went through so much hardship. And if she would have lived in that story, she would not be Oprah Winfrey. But she chose to not let that define her. It's a part of her life, but she created a life, and look what she's done for the world. We all have that same capability.
And that's super empowering. And I know that's what you do with your clients, Tanya. You're empowering women. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here, taking time out of your day. Again, everybody watching this, wherever you may be, I'm Don Fisher, your host. This is Mom's Movement and Mindset, how to break through resistance and transform your body and mind. Tanya, thank you again.
Thank you for having me, Don.